You're listening to Unguarded, a podcast about relationships and life in every season. And I'm Bec Smith, and this is my amazing husband.
I'm Joe Smith, rocking together, 12 years now? Going on year 13?
13.
Hey, let's get it. Best is yet to come.
It's gone by so quickly.
Yeah, so we still have so much more to go.
It's so true. We got married so young.
So young. Don't do the math, people. What am I going to tell you? We're still 25. Yeah. What should we talk about today?
Well, I sent you this very interesting article from the Times about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? I didn't even want to read it. It was like, well, then I couldn't because I didn't.
Because they wanted you to subscribe. Like, I don't know how much I care about this paper.
Yeah, so I
took him to $1 a week.
So I sent it to you, and then you're like, let's talk about this on a podcast.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should.
And it's interesting, too, because, a podcast is called Unguarded.
Mm-hmm.
But this article is maybe also people that do not guard their relationships very well. And, yeah, it was very interesting to me because it was a New York Times article about what's called a polycule, which I hadn't heard of before.
Neither.
And what it describes is a 20-person basically like entanglement when it comes to relationships, and there's polygamous relationships, but it's not in the traditional sense of polygamy because it's this web of marriages and friendships and some sexual, some non-sexual, but there's a commitment within this 20-person group that they're basically like all together.
Yeah.
In some way, they're all connected. And the article is really fascinating, right? Because I think it also is a little bit of an insight into where culture is moving in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to relationships, when it comes to culture, when it comes to things that we deem okay.
Yeah.
Because I think if you ask a lot of people, they will go, oh, that's no way I would ever be a part of that, and it seems extreme, a 20-person, but it just seems like there's more and more people that are asking the question, do I need to only love one person? Or asking the question, is it worth it to commit to just one person? And I thought that could be an interesting conversation. Really is like, is monogamy dead?
Yeah.
Like, is it old school to think it's romantic to commit to one person, or it's eternal, or that one person is worth your time and your investment and your love?
That's a good point.
Because really in this article there's so many layers where you hear of like, this one couple being married and they are in a like legally binding marriage, but they have best friends that they establish it as friends, but they understood and committed that, okay, at certain times we may engage that conversation, we may engage that relationship, that friendship with new texture.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, with kids in the car, I'm trying to be vague, but I don't know if kids are listening to Unguarded.
I think,
right now.
Just don't listen to this.
But basically, like they just want to sleep around.
Yeah.
And giving their spouse permission to have sex with their friends.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, coming back to that committed relationship, and that's the irony, right? Is maybe we talk about that of like, is it okay morally, right? Is it okay as long as the other person agrees to the parameters?
Yes.
Like even if you've committed to it, is it good for your soul?
Mm-hmm.
What is it communicating? So maybe talk about when you first heard about it. What were some of the first thoughts that just exploded in your mind about people who would say yes to a type of arrangement like this? What would you do if I came and said, let's join a 20-person polycule?
That's wild. I mean, I didn't know it existed, and I think it's almost like they're trying to find community. And so, or like enlarge a family. So it's like, okay, we want to find family. Maybe we don't want to have kids, but we want to have community, people we're connected to. But at the same time, it's so unhealthy because there's no boundaries to the relationships.
Okay, yes, you're going to answer that first question I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
What makes it unhealthy? And who's to say it's unhealthy?
Yeah.
Right? Why is it unhealthy if we agree that we're on the same page?
Well, it's interesting because I think you can always say that for anything, well, if I want to do it and I want to do it, then I should be allowed to do it. And you can. And I think obviously they're allowed to do whatever they want. It's their life. Mm-hmm. And if this is how they want to choose to live in a 20-person relationship, then, it's their choice. But then is it the best way? And will you find yourself hurt in the long run because you didn't foresee all the things that could happen to your soul, to your heart, by choosing this way of life, by just doing whatever you want to do and not thinking of the consequences? And I think it's crazy to think that you can sleep around with other people outside of marriage and think it won't affect your marriage.
Yeah.
And it won't affect you.
Yep.
Like, what happens to your mind when you start opening yourself up to those things?
Yep.
And then who do you become? Like, it feels the opposite of good. It feels
which is
evil. It feels like not all things are good for you. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yep.
And there's a huge flow-on effect. I mean, if you start to have kids, and then what do the kids ask, and what does that say to them? And I think boundaries are good because we think boundaries constrict us, control us. And even like, I think when meeting you, maybe this is why the last podcast we talked about in conflict is I said you were controlling, which is not true, but I said it in an emotional space. And I think that now they think about it, when I first met you, because you had such like high standards, it felt, I could have taken it two ways. Either you're holding the bar up and saying like, hey, I want to live like this, or I could have taken it as you're trying to control me and I don't have any say in the matter. But what you really were trying to do is like, hey, let's create boundaries so that we can live healthier. In the
20-person polycule.
Yeah.
Yep.
They have a lack of boundaries, I would say.
I would agree. Yeah.
That anything goes. If you want something, you can have it.
Yeah.
As long as you ask for permission, I guess, and then the other person says yes.
But that's interesting. And then I want to keep going.
No, go.
Because I don't know, there's just feel like there's something in like the facade of agreement. Because I have to believe I'm willing to stake my reputation, my bank account, everything on this truth, that if you actually ask that person and they felt they could be fully honest, are you okay with this? Do you agree with me going and sleeping with somebody else, and that is all right in your books? I have to agree. I have to believe that they would actually say no, because deep down in their core, nobody would say yes to a lesser version of a commitment to them.
Do you think then one person's more for it and the other person is lowering the bar and saying, okay, if that's what you want, and I can only have you if I say yes to this?
100%. I think that's the vast majority of the time. And I think the vast majority of the time that is a man speaking, and the woman will cater to that.
Yeah.
Because it's an ego-driven, ego-driven request.
Yes.
I'm asking that you would be okay with me fulfilling my own desires absent of you.
Yeah.
And then act like you're
a part of it. And yet what's interesting about it, in the article, it says that it was woman-led.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a great point. So maybe I disagree with myself.
Yeah. I mean, maybe women are trying to say like, oh, I want to rule or I want to lead. And this is what it looks like to lead, is to get whatever I want when I want it.
That's an interesting truth, because I forgot. That was the last line of the article.
Yeah.
As it says that Yeah, just according to the article, the group is female run.
Yeah.
So that is interesting, maybe with the pull of culture and the pendulum swings, right? Feeling like being oppressed by the man forever, right? Feeling like we finally have a moment in culture where we're gaining more power and more control. And so this is a way that we show you what control looks like.
Yeah, which is interesting because I remember listening to Mind Shift podcast with
Shout out Erwin and Aaron McManus. That's right.
And they were talking about like men need to become more like men. And I think men need to like level up, but then also women need to give space and room for men to level up. That we can't have it both ways. We can't be the one that's like leading the relationship and then wondering why the men's not leading.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because you go, maybe if we interviewed a lot of maybe the women who are running this organization or running this group, this cult, right? Whatever you want to call it. I had a feeling there's probably a lot of women that have been betrayed by men. Probably a lot of women that had been cheated on, had been, put their trust in someone and seen that wasn't actually a worthy cause. And then the response to that hurt and betrayal is to lower the bar. The response is that I'm not gonna let you have the power. I'm gonna take the power. And if we can create a type of group where anything goes, and there's no boundaries, then that protects my heart in truly being hurt. Because I just don't think a healthy person, not that I don't think, I know that a healthy person would not create an environment of unhealth.
Yeah. Well, it feels like a facade of power.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's like, I get to dictate how it goes, but you can't dictate everyone's feelings in it. What if your husband then falls in love with your best friend? Like, what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many unknowns. And when you're not committed to someone else more than yourself and you're only thinking of yourself first, then I think it's always going to just end in disarray.
Yeah, because you can see that's so good. You can see the layers and the web, right? This one particular part, it says, my husband, my nesting partner, is the person I own a home with. I also have life partnership friends. I call them my wives, who are core members in this polycule. And then one of their husbands is one of my best friends and occasional sexual partner. And I do have sex with my wives, but we're not romantically involved, but I love them. Where it's like, it's so convoluted. It's so dysfunctional, and it's so selfish, right? Like, you could just hear all the threads of, this is about me. This is about what I get. It's about my desire. And I guess that could be that's the only way a group like this works, is if the common agreement is selfishness. Like, the common agreement is that I matter more than you. And the irony, and you said this earlier, is maybe, this is the type of community that they're wanting to forge, or they're desperate for community. The irony is that is the antithesis of community.
Yeah.
That a community does not thrive unless it is about the other rather than the self. Like, the most vibrant communities that we're part of, whether it's a sports team, whether it's a church, whether it's a PTA, whether it's a neighborhood council, the best communities always thrive under the understanding and the reality that the decisions we make are not for the individual, they're for the whole.
Yeah. And I think there's a power, like, we are our best selves when we're willing to serve one another. So it doesn't really feel like they're there to serve someone else, but rather that they're serving their own desires.
Yeah.
And taking and going wherever that takes them, and saying it's okay because everyone's in agreement of it. And I do think there is a bit of that in culture, that we let things go and we don't know how to press into those hard conversations with each other because anything goes. And if you say it's okay, then it's okay.
It's good. So what's the issue with that? If I say it's okay and anything goes, what's the problem with that?
I think even Pastor Erwin had a great talk recently about like iron sharpens iron, which was a few months ago. But the power of one strong thing sharpening another. And I think the hard conversations actually sharpen you. But I think I know for me, especially after the pandemic, I feel like I'm a little bit more timid and a little bit more afraid to push into those hard conversations because I'm afraid the relationship's going to break if I push too hard. And so I wonder if we've kind of stopped fighting for our friends or fighting for our best selves.
Sure. Yeah, and the fact that, you know, with that many people, like 20 people in this web of relationships, there's probably too many voices that are being heard.
Yeah.
You know, like it's hard enough. Me and you, there's 2 voices here, and there's 4 more voices when our kids are involved.
Yeah.
And hopefully one really anchoring voice in the voice of God that's involved as well. But but this is in the web of us and our commitment. But really, it's the 2 of us. Can you imagine what our relationship would look like if we allowed dozens of other voices?
That's a good point.
To shape who we're becoming, to shape our lives, to shape our future. And I think there is something to that of like when you don't have one voice that's shaping your life or that you've committed to, you're open to too many voices. And then you're pulled in a variety of different directions. And then, you know, you don't know which voice should have priority. And maybe in one arena, this voice has priority, but then in this other arena, this voice has priority. And you're like a feather being blown in the wind.
Yeah.
And I think that is a huge aspect of, you know, where a lot of culture is moving, is we're becoming like, there is no center. Even politically, look, what used to be left is now right. We used to be right is maybe now far right. We used to be the middle is now leaning right. And it's like, even in a political sense, there's almost no center anymore. And there is something important about having a grounded, anchoring center that you know you can always come back to, that place of reason. And I just imagine in a community, you know, per se of 20 people, I don't know if there's an anchor. I just feel like it's a lot of feathers being blown all around.
Well, I think that's interesting that I think if I know from speaking for myself that if I don't have an anchor, I feel lost. And for me, God's that voice that like helps anchor me. And so when I feel like I'm getting lost just in life in general, it's the place I go to, it's God that I go to. I'm like, okay, help me, remind me of who I am. So I can't imagine, like you said, if you have all these different voices, whether you're in a relationship like this or just in life in general, when you have lots of different voices that are unhealthy, that you lose your center and you lose your North Star and you lose who you are.
Sure.
And that's, I'm sure there's going to be, it would be interesting to see in 10 years time how this plays out. Like, can you have a lasting relationships like this for the next 20, 30 years? I just don't think so.
No, I don't think so. There's what we're going to find more and more. And even on a personal level, you know, without getting into specifics, you know, you have a friend who you have loved and had conversations with, and who is in a relationship where they have kids with a person, but that person has kids with other people, and they have to act like they're okay with it. You follow me? I know we didn't talk about this before, but
I mean, sort of, but hopefully I'll get there.
But yeah, like they have to, again, it's the facade of agreement. Because the person that they have kids with has very overtly and said, I'm going to be with multiple women.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I have kids with multiple women, and you can't be mad at me because
this is what I said up front.
That's what I've said up front.
Yeah.
This is what I've told you.
Yeah.
We are on the same page, so you cannot be upset with me because we've established this.
Yes.
And it's one of those tricky things because she said yes, and she said I'm okay with it, but in the quietness of the moments and when no one's around, and especially when that person's not there, when they could be fully honest, you could see the brokenness.
Yeah.
And you could see the pain.
Yeah.
Like trying
That's
to,
true.
I can only imagine what that's got to feel like, that even me giving you multiple children isn't enough.
Mm-hmm. Because in the end, I think everyone wants to be chosen.
Yes.
And I bet she thought, I'm sure once you have children with me, even though you've had children with other women, you'll choose me. Like I'm sure each one of them think, no, eventually you're going to choose me over everyone else.
Yeah.
And that person looks like has no future of choosing. So then we then have to be in a better place to say, okay, I deserve to be chosen.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we were created, to be chosen. And then choosing someone who's worthy of that.
Absolutely.
And not just like choosing anybody, but saying like, okay, you're someone healthy and I want to live a committed life with you.
Yeah. And there is, I think, something really key about value.
Yeah.
When you understand your value, when you understand your worth, when you know who you truly are, then you're not going to agree to a joint choice that is going to validate that value and who you are. That's going to go against it. You know, and I think maybe that's actually the first step in going, how do we help people truly see their unique value and contribution?
Yeah.
That they are not just worthy to be loved, but they are deserving of someone's best. Because that's the other side of it, right? It's not just that you have an agreement that it's okay to be with multiple people, but really it's an agreement that you're saying, you're okay with the worst version of myself. Like you're okay with the selfish version of myself. And that's what you're going to get, as opposed to, because when you say no, because that's the thing, come to that place where, hey, I have an idea, right? I want to see multiple people, or I want to have an open relationship. You can have the request, but the moment when you create the boundary, when you say no, you're not just saying that I know my worth and I'm not settling for that. You're also elevating the standard for that person to go, no, I need you to know that you're better than that.
Yeah, it's good.
And we could do that in so many layers of our relationship. And that is like the iron sharpens iron that the scriptures talk about, but also it's a real principle in life, right? When you surround yourself with really driven people and you're really driven, it's crazy how successful you'll be. When you're like a really compassionate person and you surround yourself with another compassionate, it's crazy how much impact you can have on some of the biggest crises around the world.
Yeah.
That when you elevate the room and you elevate the standard, it shifts things in a really dynamic way.
I think that's interesting because like looking back and choosing you and meeting you and then like wanting to be near you, I just remember thinking like you were better in lots of areas, in the areas that I wanted to be better at. Like you had self-control that I felt like I didn't have self-control. And it's interesting that I gravitated towards you knowing if I can get around you more, then maybe I can learn those things that you have.
Interesting. Yeah.
And looking back at my childhood, and my parents got divorced, but they would have got divorced they got divorced when my twin sister and I went to college and left the house. But really their marriage was a facade for quite a few years. And didn't seem to be any self-control, that they both in their own ways were self-destructive or destructive against each other. And so it's interesting that when I found you, there was something in me that said, I want to be better at this. Like, I don't want to have my marriage end in divorce. So I need to find someone that's different to that.
Yeah, sure.
And I need to find someone that's better at it than me. And I felt like when I found you, you had so much more self-control, and you you were even-tempered, you were like calm, you had a like really strong core and really strong beliefs. And I was like, I want to be more like that. and I knew I wasn't. So I love that. I'm like, okay, I had at least some self-reflection to say,
self-awareness.
Self-awareness, that's right. I had some self-awareness to say I'm not there yet. And I think that's an interesting, like, just having a moment where you go, okay, who am I right now and who do I want to become? And then finding those people that will sharpen you and make you better.
Mm-hmm. So, I think that's great. And that's so important. I think that'll help a lot of people. I know it's helped me. It's helped you.
Yeah.
So how do you like make that choice to get in the right environment, right? To get around the right people? Like how do you say yes to the environment that's going to challenge you, that's going to push you,
that's good,
instead of running away from it?
Yeah.
Because let's stay in this polycule where we began. I don't think that it would have happened if there was a handful of people in this community that had a different standard. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that were like, no, this isn't what we're going to be about, or like, I'm not about that, so you better go somewhere else with that. It's like interesting that everybody who was choosing a lesser expression of commitment found each other.
Yeah, that's good.
So how do you not find the community and the people in the environment that are going to
pull you down,
or that you're going to settle together?
Yeah, that's good.
Instead of like being drawn to the place and the people that are going to force you to elevate, even when you know you're not at that level yet.
Yes, that's so good. But I think like when I was living in Australia in Melbourne, I could tell that the community or the people that I was surrounding myself with weren't the people that I wanted to be like, and that they had different levels of commitment. Exactly. And I was like, this is not me. And I could tell, like, I don't want to be this person, but I'm choosing to be around them. So why am I doing that to myself?
Yeah.
And then it was a slow build of like making different choices. Like my half-sister, stepsister.
Hold on. I just need to track you for half-sisters.
Stepsister.
Half-sister, stepsister. Yes, gotcha. Speaking of the web. Yep, I'm with you now. Yes.
She moved to Melbourne, and then she gave her life to Jesus. And she's like, hey, I just made this choice, but I want to go to church. I don't want to go alone. Will you go with me? So I went with her, and there I found community. There I found people who were kind and warm, and then became like best friends with people there that...
Shout out Chris and Larissa.
Yeah, exactly. That I was like, I want to be like you.
Yeah.
And so I gravitated towards that, and then I could feel the tension in my soul of the past and the future.
Yeah, wow.
And I remember, it's so funny, I'm sure if anyone is dating feels like this, when you want to go to your future and then the ex calls you and says, oh my gosh, I've missed you so much. Like, can I talk to you? Can we hang out? It's like, just as when I was like pushing forward to my new future.
Yep. There's so many people that are trying to stop this podcast right now because you're speaking into their life.
Yeah. The ex is calling you saying like, come back. And there's some part of you that says like, oh, maybe they've changed, or maybe I can pull them with me where I'm going. And so I kind of let him come to a party. Well, I let him come to a party, I guess so. And then I remember thinking, what are you doing? You just got to just cut it completely, because this is not going to work. And it's not that he doesn't deserve a good future too. It's just that it can't be near me. And so then, thank God, I just said, I'm done. We can't be friends. We can't communicate. That's it. And I'm going this way.
Yeah.
And then fast forward in coming to do an internship here in LA. Well, first of all, actually,
what?
I just don't want to jump and miss the moments of, I felt like God had a conversation with me of, hey, if you want to live a better life, then like you have to start trusting me with your whole life, with your relationships, with your finances, every part of it. And then just like wait to see what kind of adventure we go on. And once I aligned my life with him and had like healthy people in my life, then when the opportunity came up about doing an internship here in LA, I knew exactly that that's where I was supposed to go. Like that was where my future was.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying you started making different shifts and commitments and creating new habits in every arena of your life.
Yes.
That was like, you did it going like getting connected to a community of faith. For you, that was massive. But then even in that context of the community of faith, you touched on it briefly, but then you went over, but it's huge. Then you started tithing at that church. Because, we don't need to get into all this. This isn't a church podcast, but that insight is actually really important, because tithing is about a commitment. It's about a trust. It's about alignment, and then you started also doing it in friendships and the people you surrounded yourself with, and then like wanting to go on an adventure of uncertain. So it's like all these stones of, I'm going to say yes to the uncomfortable things. Then years later, you could contact trace and go, oh man, how did I create this rhythm and fuel and the current of my life is moving forward? And you could look at all of these choices that were connected to a commitment that was bigger than yourself.
Yep. And I think that God, that's the beauty of God, is like, he knows we want to be better. Like deep in our souls, he's like, I know you're calling out to want to be better, but you just don't know how. And it took effort to start choosing differently and start trusting God with all of those things that I was guarding from him, which I didn't know that I was, and I didn't know why I was doing it. I guess a sense of control.
Yeah, this is something a friend of ours said recently that was really interesting. Why do people stay in a known hell instead of an unknown heaven?
Yes. So I felt like I was staying in the known hell. And I was like, I don't like this, but I just don't know how to get out. And I was in a rut. It wasn't until that moment of giving my life to Jesus again in my early 20s that it started to become more clear. It's like I could see things differently with new eyes, and I could see my choices were creating this hell that I was living in. And actually that meant that I have the power to change my life.
Yeah.
And that was like the biggest like aha moment, like stop going down this road, shift and stop making better choices. And then you'll see that your life actually starts changing.
Sure. Yeah.
And those things of committing to new people and making new friends and choosing my friends wisely rather than just floating, like you said earlier, just floating and going wherever the wind took me, and then saying, okay, these are my friends, or this is the person I'm dating because I just randomly bumped into them, instead of making that choice. Once I started getting a little healthier and making healthier choices, like my life significantly changed. And so I think once I got to LA and found Mosaic and found people like you and Mariah, and then eventually Zotti and Tess and like all these, Brooke and all these people.
Like close friends, they're your dear friends now.
Yeah, they're my best friends. And I'm like, they became my like sharpening tool. Like Mariah is probably one of the people in my life who's younger than me, has incredible wisdom, which is undoubtedly true in her life, that she knows God and she has so much wisdom beyond her years. And I felt like she just pressed into the uncomfortable things of my life that I didn't want people to see. And she was never afraid to see them or press in, and then still loved me afterwards. And because of it, I got better and I got stronger. And I'm so grateful for someone like her in my life that was that sharpening iron on my life. And so by committing to people like her and committing to you, that's how I got better.
Yeah. I think you have to have a commitment to like what's going to push you and challenge you. Like if you don't want to be better, then it's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's good.
But if you do, and if there's something inside of you, maybe you're in an environment right now where you just know you're being pulled to the bottom of the barrel, like you're just being cut at your core, and you're having to make fake agreements for things that you desperately don't want to.
Wow, that's good. Fake agreements.
I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
No, that's so good. I feel like that's what I was doing. I was, at my core, I wouldn't say I agreed with it, but I was agreeing with it because I was going along with it and not making a choice. I was making a choice.
Yeah.
That's it.
By not making a choice.
By not making a choice, I was making a choice, and my life was what I was choosing.
Yeah, because that's maybe the lie that we tell ourselves too, is that, you know, when you don't know what to do or you're in the middle of uncertain times, is you just stay neutral. You just stay the same. You just wait, and you know it's okay. You just hit pause. But the reality in life is we never stay the same. You're never neutral.
Yeah.
Like you're always moving somewhere. So if you're not moving forward, you are regressing and you're moving backwards.
That's true.
You know, and again, that's some of the truth of, I love what you said, by not making a choice, you are making a choice.
Yeah.
You know, by
being passive.
Yeah. By saying anything goes, and that you kind of throw your hands up or like, I'm not drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah.
That is a powerful choice. It's a choice of regression. It's a choice of less than. It's a choice of that you're acting like less is more. When your soul desperately knows when that's a lie. And that's what I have to absolutely believe. At any time somebody is in a space in their life, and I have to believe this because I know this is true in my life. And I feel like there's so many universal truths that begin with a personal truth. And that when I choose less than for myself, when I lower the bar, when I am okay with okay, my soul is desperately crying out, and my soul's trying to find a way to get to my brain.
Yeah.
You know, the voices that are like echoing in my core are trying to turn the volume up.
Yeah.
Even when I hit the mute button, right? You know, I think everything in me is like, no, you're more than this.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, I was just thinking, one, like when you're going to the gym.
Yeah.
When you don't go and you've committed to yourself, like, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, and then you don't go, you just feel so lousy.
You've never done that before, though.
I've done that.
Well, you have?
Yes.
Wow.
Of course I have. You're just asleep and you don't know it. That I didn't wake up either. You know, it's like, I'm never going to regret going. And that's the key thing. I never regret doing something good for myself. I only regret that I didn't do it.
Yep.
So it's just like a fight within yourself of, am I going to rise to it, or am I going to let defeat, tell the story?
Yeah.
But then also I bumped into last Sunday at Mosaic, an old friend who I haven't seen in years, or maybe a year. And I was talking, and she was like, "Oh, congratulations on your business, your Friends of company." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I mean, I guess I've done well in some sense, but in other ways, I feel like I've done nothing." And she's like, "Well, that's because you know of how much potential you have, and you know you haven't tapped into it completely." I was like, that is so true.
Yep.
That we will always feel a little bit unsatisfied if we know there's more to give and we're not giving it. And so some ways it's like, okay, give yourself a break and say, okay, I could give more in my company, this that I'm building. And also, okay, so you haven't done it now. It's okay. You did the best you could. But now, like, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
If there's more to give and you've got more to give life, then what's holding you back from making those choices?
And what do you think, what is holding people back? What's held you back?
I mean, I think fear that we're not going to make it, or we're going to make, we're going to make a fool of ourselves, or I'm going to make a fool of myself doing it, that it's going to fail in some way, or I'm going to fail. But I think like the most successful people in life are okay about making a fool of themselves. Like if it doesn't work, it's okay. Like they don't see it as a detriment to themselves. They just rise above it and they go, cool, it didn't work, move on.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Even it makes me think of, I always relate to sports, as you know.
I know.
And
I love that.
There's two players in the NBA and maybe similar talents, but completely different outcomes. One is Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm sure I jacked that name up, but he plays with the Milwaukee Bucks and he's NBA champion. He's won an MVP, I think 2 MVPs. Arguably one of the greatest players ever, one of the top 30 players in NBA history. Definitely one of the top players now, one of the top 3 players. There's another guy named Ben Simmons who is probably just as talented and has not had the same career. And I think the key factor in why they've had different careers and outcomes is rooted in what you're talking about. Because Giannis, the irony is he is a pretty, at best, average shooter. Like 3-point shooter, free throw shooter, like he's not very good. But he continues to try to get better. And his like first year, he might have been like a 20% 3-point shooter. And then the next year he was like 25%. And the next year he was like 30%. And he's still not a great shooter, but he's willing to take the shot.
Wow.
And there's maybe even in moments in big games where the other team leaves him wide open. And like they want him to shoot and he'll shoot it and he'll miss. And they'll leave him wide open again. He'll shoot it and he'll miss. And it does not affect his confidence. Even though he's not a great 3-point shooter, he believes that it's worth the shot.
Wow.
Ben Simmons, this other guy, is also a terrible shooter, but is such a perfectionist. And people around him and close to him have said that the main issue with him and the reason he's a terrible shooter, but he won't even try. He's only taking a handful of 3-point shots a year, and he won't shoot because he's afraid to miss. Because he is like, if I'm going to shoot it, I have to know I'm going to make it.
Wow.
And because of that, he's chosen. His response isn't to shoot and miss. His response is not even to take a shot.
Wow.
And it's the mindset that's affected his career. And now he's injured all the time. And everybody's going to point to the fact that his career maybe didn't end up the way that we thought because of the injuries. But I don't think it's the injuries, it's the mindset.
Wow.
And it's the mindset that I believe has affected the injury. Because when you're confident, you're going to put yourself in position and you're going to be aggressive.
Yeah.
And you're going to be okay with missing it and okay with the failure. And that's the trajectory of the careers. Giannis is absolutely okay if he misses because he's going to shoot the next one. And it's allowed him to be in the position to be one of the greatest players ever because he's not focusing on the misses. He's learning from them, and it's actually giving him context to become a better player.
Yeah.
Whereas Ben is only focused on the shots that he's missed and has paralyzed him so much that now he's refusing to even shoot.
Wow.
And I wonder how many times in our lives that's true.
Yes.
Where the missed shot paralyzes us, the failure, the uncertainty, the worry, and we choose to be on the court, but we're not in the game.
Wow. That's good.
That's all I got.
I want
Basketball's done. I translate to basketball and then I tap out.
No, I mean, it's so good. I'm like, I want to be someone who...
You want to be honest.
Yeah, I want to be the one that's okay with failure. And one interesting thing is back to, like, funnily enough, our relationship and communication. I remember one time being in a premarital counseling, and there was something that I was unaware about myself. And you and the person that was leading it was like, yeah, did you not know this? Like, you do this, and it's like really unhealthy. And I remember being so ashamed and so like vulnerable and like just like I felt like there was a wound and I was bleeding out in front of everybody. And I was like, didn't you not see that there was a big wound in there? And I'm like, oh dang, there is, and I didn't know it existed. There was like a blind spot. And then I remember looking to you saying like, well, I'm sure you don't want to like marry me now knowing this thing that I do, like unhealthy thing that I do. And you were like, why would I ever do that? I'm like, who says yes to like put
perfect, yeah, put together, yeah.
Well, I know, I feel like who says yes to someone who's not put together?
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
And you were like, no, this is fun for me, which just seems so weird. But you're like, this is.
Did I say this is fun for me?
Maybe I really think you did. You're like, oh, this is like fun for me because we can work it.
I do remember what I said.
Yeah. What did you say?
I didn't say it was fun for me. That sounds like somebody who's like masochistic.
No,
But
no.
I did say I got excited.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is this? What's exciting about this? I said, because now we know what dragons to kill. Before we were slaying each other.
Yes.
Because we didn't have a common enemy. And then once we defined it and declared it, now the conversation shifted, and now we had direction and purpose together.
Yes.
And we're like, let's go slay that dragon.
Yes. Dang, that's so good.
Yeah, we did it.
I mean, but that's so true. I think that's why relationships break down, is because we're attacking each other because we can't really see the root of the problem. And instead of taking the time to look at the root of the problem, or getting people's opinion or help and saying like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like, I don't know why I keep hitting the same wall. Like, can you help me out? Back to like having healthy people in your life that reflect the truth, not just what you want to see, but the truth, even if it's hard to hear. Making sure you're having people like that so that you're not attacking the person who wants to help you get better.
Yep.
And luckily, when you said that, to me, that was an unheard of, like, I've never heard that in my life. In my life, what I would have thought up until that point was, if you know someone's damaged, then you cut bait, or you just say, okay, well, you figure it out.
Yeah, sure.
But instead, you're like, no, I'm going to figure this out with you. Like, we're a team, and we're going to slay this giant, this dragon, and then we're going to move forward, and it's going to be great. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I probably put so much shame into being wrong or having something wrong inside of me that I put so much shame on it when it really didn't need to be. It's like, cool, then we can change it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That there's always room to change, just like with Giannis.
Yeah.
That he's like, I can change. He didn't give up on himself. God doesn't give up on you.
Yeah.
So don't give up on you. Fight for the best version of yourself. And if you don't know how, get around people who are better than you and let them fight for you.
It's good. Because I think full circle back to our polycule is I don't know if that environment is you're surrounding yourself with people who are better than you.
Wow.
You know, and maybe that's the first step, is getting out of, maybe you're in a friendship polycule where all of you have lowered the bar, and all of you are dysfunctional, and you've chosen lesser future because of your present actions, and you need somebody. Some of you just need one person that rises above and says, no, we're better than this. Not on my watch. Yeah. And then maybe that's the shift you need to make. But that's the thing with all this. The shift first has to start with you. It's got to start personally and internally, where you decide, I'm not going to have a fake commitment to myself or to others. I'm going to have a honest commitment to always strive for more, to always believe in the best in people. And then if I'm going to believe in the best in other people, I first got to believe in the best in me.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for me, what broke my heart. You know, like, I was just so sad when I read this article, because I was sad to think that there is a group of 20 people who have such a low view of themselves. Because if they knew who they truly were, they would reject the environment that was creating less, and they would just realize that there's so much more to them, and that they deserve so much more, and that there was somebody worthy of their love, even if the first person that was worthy of their love was themselves. And I just think we have to continue reminding people of their infinite value. Yeah. We need to keep pulling out the good in people, and to do it in love, and when we have people around us, like, we got to be have the type of character and intention, and be the type of individuals that are disruptors in people's lives, that are irritants, that are like, hey, you can choose that in that room, but in this room, if you're going to have me in your life, I'm always going to pull you to more.
That's good.
Yeah, I think that's how we create a world that looks a little bit more beautiful, and a little more full of love, and a little bit more honoring the value of commitment, because committing to one person is not about eliminating all the other options. Committing to one person is about letting that person know that it's not about the other universe out there. It's about the universe we create here, and that you're worth it.
Wow.
So thank you for being my one, for committing to me and committing to, and that's why I think marriage is essential, and why when people wonder like, yeah, what is it so outdated, or why do I still need to be married, or like it's just a legal contract. I was talking to somebody recently about that. Like, why do I need to get married? I said, because there's no magic in the marriage, but there is power in the intention, and there's power in the marker, and that when you make that commitment on that day, you're saying, this is going to be my anchor that I always come back to.
Yeah.
That it's not about me. It's not about my desires. It's not about my selfish wants. But the commitment wasn't, even in that moment at the altar, the commitment isn't what you can do for me. The commitment really is, and the power in it is in what I'm telling you I'm going to do for you. Mm-hmm. And I think it's time we reclaim not just monogamy, but we actually reclaim the power of love.
Let's talk about in the next podcast.
Yeah.
I love that.
Cliffhanger.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us for this conversation. It's been really fun having you. I hope this has been meaningful for you. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube and to like, to share, to follow. And we can't wait to join you in the next one. We love you guys.
See you soon.